If you're anything like me, you love using period correct printers with your vintage machines, and I have a soft spot for image writers. But if you want to print in color, you might find that your color ribbon isn't advancing anymore. That's because the mechanism that actually advances it is it's a rubber roller that has disintegrated years ago or will fail shortly. And they're not making these anymore. So what do? Well, I have a really easy fix with an O-ring. All right, so this is what a typical color cart would look like for the ImageWriter II. You see we have our colors on here. It would advance. The printer plugs into here. That's what turns the ribbon around. Pull it around so we always have fresh ribbon. But for a cart this old, all of your rubber rollers have disintegrated or broken. So we need to replace that. Fortunately, these are really easy to open. No screws, no nothing. You just got to get in here, gently pry the top off. And you're going to want to go the whole way around. Just keep prying. You'll see there's little posts that go from the cover down into the base. Make sure it's top side up always, otherwise you're going to dump dozens of feet of ribbon all over the place. Alright, so as you can see, the top cover just has these posts that go into the bottom here. So we can see these rollers have already disintegrated, and it's really easy to get to. All you have to do is just lift them up. Be careful, because on this bottom roller there's a spring, and that's what's pushing tension up on the top. So we're going to remove the top roller. You see I have my finger on the bottom one. We're going to lift the top one up without taking too much of the ribbon out. We'll push this off to the side. So I already was in here and cleaned out a lot of the failed rollers. But this one, so each model is slightly different on the roller configuration. But this one has 3 on each of these spindles. So top, middle, and bottom, rubber roller. Same thing on this other spindle here. This retainer pick clip pulls right off, and there is your roller. Now what we're going to do to replace this is I'm going to use number 11 O-rings. This is 3/4 of an inch outside diameter, 9/16 of an inch inside diameter. This is the closest thing I found. It's not exactly the same, but we're going to make up for that. I have links for this, Amazon affiliate links below. If you're looking for this, you can also just buy a random O-ring kit. It's pretty helpful to have O-rings around the house. But this is what we're going to do. Now, as I said, each of these rollers, depending on the manufacturer, is slightly different. For this one, I think this is a Quill brand. Each rubber roller will get replaced with 2 O-rings. So I'm going to slide this onto the middle while we keep that top one on, just so you can see that there is definitely a size difference, but it's manageable. So if you look, yeah, the original rubber is slightly larger. However, if I went with a size up, right? So if we look at the O-ring kit I originally used here, right? So, I went with a number 12 O-ring, but it didn't fit on the roller just tight. So this is a fair trade-off of making sure that the O-ring is snug on the roller, so it's not slipping around, but it's not too big where it slips around and it just doesn't fit right. It's a balancing act, but we'll make up for it. So we're going to replace the rest of these. So for each of these rollers, we're going to use 6 O-rings, so 12 O-rings altogether.
When you're putting on the new O-rings, make sure that the spindle is clear of all that old rubber. You don't want any old junk getting in the way.
All right, so now we have both rollers fully assembled with the O-rings. So I like to install the one with the spring in first. Now, these springs, I've done this with multiple different printers. Generally, these springs are pretty good. You can, if you do need to replace this, if it's broken or you lose it, you can actually take the spring out of a mechanical pencil. The one that sits right up front here, you can take that out. That will fit in here and that will work for you. Before I put the spring in, I just kind of stretch it out just a little bit to make sure we get some good tension in there. Pop it back in there. And on the bottom roller, the one with the spring, we want to make sure that it sits in here good. There's a little retaining clip on the bottom. You heard it clip in there, right? And it keeps the white plastic thing in edge. And I'm going to try to flip this over to show you the bottom without dumping all this ribbon. I did that once, and it was like, if you ever working on an HVAC and you pop it open and it just flies everywhere. It was a mess. So we'll flip it over. You see that there's a guide right here, and that's where that bottom roller will go. So now, being mindful that we want to make sure we keep the ribbon routing correct, because this ribbon has to come down, go between the two pinch rollers, and then get shoved into this chamber here. So we're just going to kind of get my finger in here, make a little bit of room. And we're going to have to push down because the spring is pushing up and the O-rings are there. And that is pretty tight. But we're going to go a little bit more because we do have some play on this top. So you see where the white guide, the white holder that holds this pinch ring together, there's a little bit of room in there. Now what I've done, I had really good success with this, and I think it works great. If you take the plastic, you buy a battery pack, right? Your battery's in here. This is the plastic around it. If you were to take this, cut one of the sides off, just like that. Cut this in half. You might have to trim a little more. But if you were to fold it, put this in the top, and then again, the other one you cut off, fold it, put them in the bottom. In my experience, that gives you just the right amount of tension you need for this to print properly. So we'll go throw this in. You got to be mindful of the spring. What you might want to do is pull it out, put the spring in, and then slide that piece of plastic in. But before we do all that, let's just make sure that's lined up. Can I advance the ribbon? I can. Look at that. You can see it going around. That is perfect. That's exactly what it should be like on a new one. And you see on the far left-hand side, the ribbon is getting pulled out of that chamber. And on the right-hand side, it's getting spooled up here. Now we're going to tap it down a little bit, and my piece of plastic fell out because the top isn't there, so the ribbon pops up a little bit. Now, I'll put these plastics in, we'll get this button back up, and we will test it on my ImageWriter II. But before I say that, and before we get it all buttoned up, when you have these rollers fail, if it fails in the middle of a print, what you will see generally on the ribbon face here, you start getting holes or you get very thin areas because it's still trying to print. It's still boom, 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 boom. The dot matrix printer is still hitting this ribbon, but because it's not being advanced, we're putting a lot of extra stress on here. I have found that if you were to get some fabric tape, right, you can get that at like a Joann's Fabric, a craft store. You can put that on the back of it. If you do have a rip, you can repair this in a very similar fashion that you would an 8-track, okay? I've had mixed results on that. They will eventually fail. If this ribbon starts getting holes in it because your rollers failed and there's just boom, 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 you're getting all that pressure on there and it starts to fail, it's going to rip eventually. So you can buy yourself a little bit more time in putting some fabric tape on that. So you see, this is really easy. Just get yourself some number 11 O-rings, throw it in here. If you have any of these printers available in your stock already, replace the O-rings, put them on now. If you buy new old stock color, replace it. So we're going to get this button back up after I put my plastics in off camera. We're going to go over to the ImageWriter and I'm going to show you how beautiful this thing can print. Before we throw this in the printer, I want to share two things. Preferably, before you button everything back up, do some forensic reconstruction to make sure you have all of the old rubber wheels out, because what will happen is you'll get little parts like this that will get bound up inside all of the windings, and as they work their way across, it can just really bind everything up and break that ribbon. Another thing, make sure that your top roller is in the right orientation. The hand screw needs to be on the top, and the Phillips looking side goes on the bottom. Make sure your orientation is right, and make sure you reconstruct all of your little rubber rollers to make sure you don't have any left inside the cart. All things considered, that looks really good. We do have a little bit of banding in there, but that's kind of typical for this. But you know what? The important thing is it works. I went from not being able to print anything to now being able to print in color with my original ribbon cables. And you know what? I'm going to go through the rest of them that I have in storage and replace them with these O-rings. So anytime I need to swap it out, they'll work. And you know, this isn't just ImageWriter 2 specific. Really, almost any other dot matrix printer probably has very similar issues. And these number 11 O-rings might not work for you, but an O-ring probably will work for you. So I'm going to have affiliate links for the number 11 specific, but I'm also going to have an affiliate link for just a random O-ring kit that I have. I'd like to have a kit of O-rings. You never know when you need them. So hopefully this helped you. If it did help you, let me know in the comments below. What printer are you using? What did you print? If you follow me on social media, send me a picture of what you're printing now in full color. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you like what we're doing here at Retro Tech or Die, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll catch you next time.